In a sports town like St. Louis, the sudden disappearance of sports during the coronavirus pandemic is painful. Week after week without fans filling stadium seats is taking a toll.
Some of these people, the only time they come downtown is for a Cardinals ball game. And so they spend money at a bar or at a restaurant. That spending is not taking place right now. So not only are the temp workers at Busch Stadium currently without a job, but unquestionably, all of the restaurants and hotels nearby, those workers are being laid off because there's not the same amount of revenue coming through.
Patrick Risch is the director of the sports business program at Washington University in St. Louis. He says professional sports without fans, or a limited number, is just part of possible catastrophic losses. Risch uses the direct hit to the St. Louis Cardinals organization as an example.
You're talking Cardinals probably losing somewhere between $2 and $2.5 million per home game missed from ticket revenue and fan spending at the ballpark. So you add that up across the season, and that's a lot of money.
He examined publicly available data to figure the loss to the national economy, focusing on the months covering the shutdown from COVID-19 through the end of summer. Risch ran the numbers for the shutdown of all sports in the U.S., including professional, college, high school, and youth sports, taking into consideration phases of reopenings and restrictions.
The impact is at least, and that's a key phrase, at least $12 billion, because it's $12 billion and climbing.
And depending on what happens the many months ahead, he says the estimated $12 billion impact to the sports industry could more than double, erasing billions more in revenue and costing hundreds of thousands of jobs.
Calculations that I gave, for example, didn't include any losses with respect to the NFL. But if the NFL doesn't have fans, you're going to see billions in lost ticket revenue and food and beverage at the stadiums.
In your analysis, what are the layers that you're putting under a microscope to determine overall losses?
Well, the one that took the most time was professional sports and looking at the fan spending. And it's really looking at a couple things. First of all, you need to know what's the typical cost for fans to go to a sporting event. And there is some data that's put out by a company called Team Marketing Reports. They calculate what they call the fan cost index. What does it cost a family of four to go to a sporting event? You use that data along with attendance data to at least gauge, okay, roughly what are they spending, teams receiving on ticket revenue? What are they receiving from facility revenue? In other words, food and beverage, merchandise, parking. That's something that, it takes a little bit of time, but we're able to calculate that for every league. Then on top of that, the media revenue is a little bit easier to calculate because the national media deals, that's publicly available information, and then you could just calculate it on a per game basis to figure out the prorated media revenue that these teams end up receiving. Same thing with respect to sponsorship revenue. There are some publicly available websites that do provide at least an overall estimate of what the NHL, the NBA gets from sponsorships, and you can use that to try to, again, prorate it on a game-to-game basis.
Along with the fate of professional sports, college football dominates headlines.
It is the largest source of revenue for basically all the major Division I schools, and it does help to finance a certain percentage of the overall athletics department. That's why people don't want to cancel the season altogether, and they at least like to have fans, because if you don't have fans, it's a huge loss in revenue.
And then, not talked about as much, youth sports, an estimated $19 billion industry. Of that $12 billion ballpark figure, Risch estimates a $2.4 billion hit from the loss of just youth sports by the end of summer.
I've done economic impact studies at some of these multi-sport complexes all across America, so I know how much money comes in when a city like Elizabethtown, Kentucky, outside of Louisville, hosts a 50-team soccer tournament. It adds up. Part of that is families traveling to various destinations across the country and spending money on restaurants and hotels and registration fees to get their kids in these tournaments.
He says his estimates are conservative. Depending on what happens with COVID-19, they could be the tip of the iceberg.